My boyfriend lied to his mom about me and expected me to play along. I ignored it the first time, but then it became a pattern. When I finally called him out, he laughed it off and said it wasn't a big deal. I told him it wasn't something I'd just accept. So I gave him a choice: tell the truth or lose me. And he didn't think I'd follow through. Hello, everyone. My name is Clara Bennett. I'm 27, and I've never been the kind of woman who needs everyone's approval to feel secure in a relationship, especially not a boyfriend's mother. I understand families are complicated. Some parents are protective, some are controlling. Some make love feel like something you have to earn by staying quiet. I never expected Marcus's mother to welcome me instantly. I didn't need forced sweetness, family photos, or a seat at every Sunday dinner. What I needed was simple. I needed my boyfriend to act like I existed. Marcus was 35 when we started dating. Older than me, calmer on the surface, and very good at making avoidance sound like patience. He had this soft, careful way of speaking that could turn any red flag into something reasonable if you wanted to believe him badly enough. And I did. From early on, I knew his relationship with his mother wasn't simple. He never called it controlling. He never said he was afraid of her. But whenever her name appeared on his phone, his whole body changed. His shoulders tightened. His voice dropped. Even basic answers seemed to pass through an invisible filter before he allowed himself to say them. At first, I felt sorry for him. I thought maybe honesty had never felt safe in his home. Maybe he had learned young that peace mattered more than truth. I understood that. But understanding someone's wound does not mean volunteering to disappear inside it. The first few times, the hiding was subtle. If his mother called while I was beside him, he stepped into another room. If she asked what he was doing, he said, "Nothing much," even when we were eating dinner together. If I made any sound in the background, he lowered his voice like he had been caught. I noticed. Of course I noticed. But I kept telling myself not to be insecure. I told myself it was early. Family dynamics take time. Every time that small sting rose in my chest, I swallowed it and called it patience. Marcus promised things would change. "She needs time," he said. "She's old-fashioned. She doesn't handle new people well." Then he would take my hand, look at me with those tired brown eyes, and say, "I'm serious about you, Clara. You know that, right?" And because I loved him, I kept answering yes. On my side, there was no hiding. My parents knew about Marcus. My friends knew about Marcus. My coworkers heard his name enough to ask how he was doing. When my mother invited him over for dinner, I didn't call him a friend or make excuses. I introduced him as the man I was building something real with. He sat at my family table. He ate my mother's cooking. He laughed with my father. He accepted every bit of warmth my family offered him. Afterward, walking back to his car, he kissed my forehead and said, "Your family is kind." I smiled. "Now it's your turn." He didn't answer right away. That silence should have told me everything. Instead, he squeezed my hand and said, "Soon." Soon became later. Later became not the right time. And not the right time became so familiar that I could predict it before he even opened his mouth. The strange part was, I had already met his mother once. Marcus had forgotten something at her house, and I was with him when he stopped by. During the drive, he tapped his thumb against the steering wheel, like he was counting down to a disaster only he could see. When we arrived, he introduced me politely. "This is Clara," he said, "my girlfriend." His mother looked at me for a long second. She wasn't warm, but she wasn't cruel either. Her eyes moved over my face, my coat, my hands folded neatly in front of me. Then she nodded once. "I see." That was it. Not welcoming, not rejecting, just watching. I was polite. I smiled. I thanked her for letting us stop by. I didn't try too hard. I only wanted her to see I wasn't something Marcus needed to hide. On the way home, Marcus said, "That went better than I expected." I remember feeling relieved. Not happy exactly. Just relieved in that quiet way you feel when something you feared doesn't explode. A few days later, his mother apparently told him our families could talk eventually. She didn't suddenly approve of me, but she said enough that I thought the door had opened. I was wrong, because when it was time for Marcus to step through that door, he backed away. My mother invited him again. He said he was tired. My father suggested lunch somewhere casual. Marcus said his schedule was difficult. When I asked if he wanted me to come with him to see his mother again, he said, "Let's not rush it." But we weren't rushing. We had been together long enough for caution to start looking like shame. Behind closed doors, Marcus was affectionate. He talked about the future. He asked what kind of apartment I liked, whether I wanted children someday, whether I believed people could build a peaceful life after messy beginnings. But whenever his mother entered the picture, I became smaller, not because I changed, because he made room for everyone except me, and I kept waiting for him to notice. He didn't, at least not until I stopped pretending I could live that way. Looking back now, I think the hardest relationships to leave are the ones that give you just enough hope to stay. If Marcus had been openly cruel, maybe I would have walked away sooner. But he loved me in private and erased me in public, and that contradiction kept me trapped longer than I want to admit. A few months in, I started noticing how carefully he separated his life. There was us, the version of him that stayed over at my apartment, kissed my forehead while I made coffee, and fell asleep with his arm around my waist. Then there was the version of him connected to his family. That version spoke differently, moved differently, hid things. One evening, we were out at dinner when his mother called. Marcus glanced at the screen, and I saw the shift immediately. His face tightened. "You can answer," I said. He nodded and picked up. The first thing he did was look around the restaurant, not at me, around me, making sure my voice wouldn't carry through the phone. "Hey, Mom," he said quietly. I stared at my water glass while he talked. Candlelight flickered across the table between us. It should have been normal. Couples answer phone calls around each other all the time. But somehow I felt like an inconvenience sitting there. Then his mother asked what he was doing. Marcus said, "Just grabbing food." Not, "I'm having dinner with Clara." Not, "I'm out with my girlfriend." Just food. A vague answer designed to leave no trace of me behind. When he hung up, I tried to smile. "You know she's eventually going to realize I exist, right?" He gave me a weak look. "You're overthinking it." That phrase started appearing more and more. "You're overthinking it. You're making this bigger than it is. It's temporary. You know how she gets." Every explanation sounded calm enough to almost feel reasonable. And for a while, I accepted them because the alternative was too painful. I wasn't being brought into his life. I was being managed around it. There were moments when I almost confronted him directly, but then he softened me again. He brought coffee to my office after stressful days. He remembered small things I forgot I had told him. He talked about future trips, future homes, future plans. Future became his safest hiding place. Because as long as everything lived in the future, he never had to fully claim me in the present. One night, my mother asked me a question I didn't know how to answer. We were cleaning dishes while Marcus sat in the living room talking to my father. My mother handed me a plate and asked carefully, "Does his family know how serious this is?" I froze. Not long, but long enough. Mothers notice pauses. "They know about me," I said quietly. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. My mother studied my face before drying her hands. "Clara," she said softly, "you shouldn't have to convince someone to claim you." That sentence stayed with me because deep down, I already knew she was right. The strange thing was, Marcus never asked me to hide him. Not once. He posted photos from trips we took together, but carefully. Sunsets, wine glasses, hotel balconies, my hands sometimes. Never my face, never us. At first, I ignored it. Then one night, while he slept beside me, I scrolled through his old posts and found Vanessa, his ex-girlfriend. She was everywhere. Photos with his family, holiday dinners, beach trips, birthday captions filled with public love, his mother commenting hearts under almost every picture. It felt like finding evidence from a version of Marcus I had never been allowed to meet, not because I thought he still loved Vanessa, but because once he had known how to stand beside a woman in the open. So why not me? That question changed something inside me, quietly at first, then completely. A week later, I asked him directly. We were lying in bed, the television glowing softly across the room. "Why was Vanessa all over your social media, but I'm basically invisible?" The silence lasted too long. Marcus exhaled slowly. "That relationship was different." I turned toward him. "How?" He rubbed his hand over his face. "Vanessa pushed for everything to be public. And I don't? That's not what I mean." "Then what do you mean?" His voice sharpened. "Why does everything have to become a problem lately?" That hurt more than an answer would have. because it told me he saw my pain as inconvenience, not information. "Do you know how humiliating it feels?" I asked. His expression changed, not angry, defensive. "You know I love you." "That's not what I asked." "You know my situation with my mother is complicated. And somehow, I'm always the one paying for it." He looked away. That was another pattern. Whenever truth came too close, Marcus withdrew. He became quiet, cold, unreachable. Like if he lowered the emotional temperature enough, the conversation would die on its own. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes I got tired first. But little by little, something in me changed. I stopped feeling like his partner. I started feeling like a secret he hoped everyone would politely ignore. And the worst part was, I still loved him while realizing it. Love does not disappear the moment respect starts breaking. Sometimes they overlap, and that overlap is where people lose themselves. Then came the fight that should have ended everything much earlier than it did. It started over something small, a canceled plan, a missed call, something ordinary that should have stayed ordinary. Marcus had been distant for days. Not cruel, not obviously cold, just elsewhere. I would ask questions and get half answers. I would tell him about my day, and he would nod without really hearing me. Eventually I asked, "What's going on with you lately?" He sighed. That sigh irritated me more than it should have because it sounded like I had exhausted him simply by noticing the distance. We were at my apartment that night. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The television played quietly in the background while neither of us watched. "I'm asking because I care," I said. "I know." "Then talk to me." "I just don't want to fight." Something in me snapped. "Marcus, every difficult conversation is not a fight." "You always say that right before it becomes one." I stared at him. "So now I'm the problem because I ask questions?" "That's not what I said." "It's what you meant." He stood and walked toward the kitchen, rubbing both hands over his face. "No," I said, following him. "Don't walk away again." "I'm trying to calm down." "You're trying to avoid the conversation. And you're trying to force one." His voice rose enough to change the room. I folded my arms, suddenly aware of how small my apartment felt. "Do you even hear yourself?" I asked. "You shut down every time something gets uncomfortable, then act like I'm unreasonable for wanting clarity." "There you go again with that word." "What word?" "Clarity." He laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "You want huge emotional conversations about every little thing." My stomach dropped. "Every little thing?" "That's not what I meant." "Then explain what you meant." But he couldn't. Months of buried frustration spilled out after that. Every avoided introduction, every vague answer, every moment I had swallowed my pride to keep the peace. Finally, I said the thing I had been holding back. "Sometimes it feels like you're ashamed of me." The silence was immediate, heavy. Marcus looked shocked for half a second, then defensive. "How can you even say that?" "Because your actions keep saying it for you." "That's insane." "Is it? You hide me from your mother. You avoid bringing me into your life. You act like being honest about us is some impossible burden. I never said I was ashamed of you." "You didn't have to." That was when everything tipped. His frustration broke through all at once. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. And you don't understand what this relationship feels like for me. I'm doing my best. Your best keeps making me feel invisible." The next seconds still replay too clearly in my memory. Marcus stepped closer while arguing. Not threatening exactly, but overwhelmed in a way that changed the air. I backed up on instinct. Then I said something about his mother again. And he snapped. His hand moved before either of us could process it. The room went silent. For a second, neither of us moved. I could hear the rain again. Marcus stared at me like he didn't understand what he had just done. I touched my face slowly. Not dramatically, almost mechanically. His expression shifted from anger to horror. "Clara." I stepped back before he could reach me. "Oh my God," he whispered. I didn't cry right away. Shock is quieter than people expect. I just stood there while one truth settled into my chest. He had crossed a line, and what hurt almost as much was what came after. "I'm overwhelmed." "You kept pushing." "I didn't mean to. I'm under pressure." Every explanation circled accountability without landing on it. Eventually, he cried. Real tears. And somehow that made it more confusing. He didn't look dangerous. He looked broken, horrified by himself, like someone watching his worst fear become real in front of him. I would never hurt you, he kept saying. But he already had. Later that night, after hours of chaos, he asked if he could call my mother. I should have said no. At the time, I was too exhausted to understand the difference between stabilizing the situation and excusing it. The call became another disaster. At first, Marcus tried apologizing politely, but once my mother realized he had put his hands on me, her tone changed. She was furious, and she had every right to be. Marcus reacted badly to that anger. Instead of accepting it, he became defensive, then emotional, then reactive. Before I could stop him, he was raising his voice at my mother over the phone. I grabbed the phone from him, stunned. My mother went silent before saying quietly, "Clara, this man is not stable." That sentence haunted me, because I knew why she said it. The next morning, Marcus showed up outside my apartment with flowers, then coffee, then long messages, then apologies that stretched for pages. He admitted he needed therapy. He admitted his fear of conflict had turned into emotional instability. He said he panicked when he felt cornered because he had spent most of his life burying difficult feelings instead of facing them. And against my better judgment, I stayed. Part of me hated myself for it. Another part believed that moment wasn't who he truly was. Because outside of conflict, Marcus could be gentle, thoughtful, loving in ways that felt real. And when someone hurts you, then becomes the person comforting you afterward. Your mind starts clinging to the safer version of them. That is the dangerous part. People imagine damaged relationships as constant misery. Sometimes they are not. Sometimes they are warm enough to keep you confused. Marcus promised things would change. For a while they seemed to. He became calmer, more careful. He apologized faster. He avoided raising his voice. He even talked more openly about how fear shaped him. I convinced myself we had survived the worst. But I understand now that the slap was not the core problem. It was a symptom. The real problem was still underneath. Marcus would do almost anything to avoid discomfort in the moment, even if the cost came later. And eventually that pattern returned. Not through anger this time. Through a lie so casual it changed the way I saw him forever. The moment that broke us didn't happen during a dramatic explosion. No screaming, no shattered glass, no one running into the rain. It happened quietly. So quietly that if I had not already been watching the pattern, I might have missed it. Marcus's longtime friend, Olivia, had just moved across the country for work. They had known each other for years, and even though I sometimes felt Olivia saw through Marcus more clearly than anyone else, I liked her. She was blunt in a way he never was. The day she left, Marcus called me late at night. I was curled on my couch with a blanket over my legs, half watching a show I didn't care about. The moment I heard his voice, I knew he had been crying. "She's really gone," he said softly. I muted the television. "Hey, talk to me." For the next 20 minutes, he did. He talked about how empty the city felt, how hard change was for him, how strange it was when someone familiar was suddenly far away. And I listened, because despite everything, I still loved him enough to show up when he was hurting. At one point, he laughed weakly and said, "You're the only person who knows how to calm me down." That should have felt intimate. Instead, it made me sad. Because calming Marcus down had slowly become one of my responsibilities. Then I heard movement on the other end, a door opening. Footsteps. His mother's voice in the background. "Who are you talking to?" The question didn't matter. His answer did. Without even pausing, Marcus said, "Olivia, she landed a few hours ago." My entire body went still. Not because he lied, because of how fast he did it. No hesitation, no panic, no conflict, just instinct. Like removing me from the room was natural. I stayed silent and listened as his mother responded with something about travel delays. Marcus continued smoothly, like I wasn't still on the line hearing every word. A few minutes later, he came back to me. "Sorry," he said. "What were you saying?" But I wasn't listening anymore. I was staring at my reflection in the dark television screen, feeling something cold settle inside me. Suddenly, every moment from the past year rearranged itself. The vague introductions, the careful omissions, the hidden photos, the stepped-out calls. This was not temporary discomfort. This was instinct. Marcus did not just hide me when he was scared. He removed me when honesty became inconvenient, and somehow that hurt more than the argument ever had. The next morning, I still hadn't answered his goodnight text. He sent another, "You okay?" Then, "Did you fall asleep?" Then, "Clara?" I waited another hour before calling him. The second he answered, I heard caution in his voice. "Hey, why did you lie about me last night?" Silence, not confusion, recognition. He knew. "It wasn't like that," he said carefully. "I laughed once, but it didn't sound like me." "Marcus, I heard you." "I just didn't want to deal with another conversation with my mom while I was already emotional." "So your solution was pretending I didn't exist? That's not fair. Then explain how it's different." He sighed, always the sigh. Always the sound of accountability arriving like an inconvenience. It was easier in the moment, he admitted. Easier. That word landed harder than any argument. "You know what's crazy?" I asked quietly. "I don't think you understand how humiliating this has become." "That's dramatic." There it was, the soft dismissal, the calm little knife. "You lied to your mother about talking to your own girlfriend. It wasn't some huge betrayal, Clara. Not to you. That's because you're making it bigger than it is." "No," I said. "I'm finally seeing it at its real size." He went quiet. For 1 second, I thought he understood. Then he did what he always did when cornered. He explained instead of reflected. "You know how my mother gets." "No," I said. "Actually, I don't. Because every terrifying reaction you predicted from her exists mostly in your head." "That's unfair." "She met me. She didn't scream. She didn't ban you from seeing me. She didn't threaten you. Most of this conflict is coming from you." "That's easy for you to say. Because I'm not the one lying." Silence stretched between us. Then he softened his tone. "Clara, it just wasn't a big deal." That sentence broke something final in me, because people usually say something is not a big deal when it did not hurt them. I leaned back against my couch. "Do you know what this feels like from my side?" He didn't answer. "It feels like every time truth asks something from you, I'm the first thing you throw away." "That's not true." "Then why is hiding me your first instinct?" "I'm not hiding you." You replaced me with Olivia in one sentence. It was easier than starting another argument. Another argument. Another inconvenience. Another emotional mess he wanted to manage instead of face. And suddenly, I was tired in a way anger could not reach. Tired of translating my pain into words soft enough for him to tolerate. My voice became calmer after that. Colder, too. "Marcus," I said, "this isn't just about last night." "What does that mean?" "It means this relationship only exists fully when it's comfortable for you." "That's not fair. What part of this has been fair to me?" He started apologizing, but the apology sounded familiar before it finished. Stress, pressure, timing, fear, always reasons circling the truth. Then somehow the conversation became stranger. Marcus started talking about morality, about intentions, about how sometimes small lies prevent unnecessary pain. He even brought up spirituality, trying to make the lie sound deeper than it was. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Somehow he had turned lying about me into a philosophical debate. "This is not about spirituality, Marcus. That's not what I'm saying." "Yes, it is. You're dressing up a simple choice." "And what choice is that?" I took a slow breath. "You chose to erase me instead of risk discomfort." Real silence followed. Then I said the sentence that changed everything. "You tell your mother the truth today, or we're done." The moment I gave him that ultimatum, something shifted. Not because he was suddenly afraid to lose me, because I realized he had never believed I would leave. For almost 2 years, I had been the understanding one, the patient one. The woman who stayed after a line was crossed because she believed people could change. The woman who explained pain calmly instead of exploding. Marcus had grown used to that version of me, so when I finally drew a hard line, he tried to soften it. Clara, he said carefully, you're talking about ending an entire relationship over one awkward moment. No, I said. I'm talking about ending a relationship over a pattern. You're reducing everything between us down to one flaw. One flaw? I repeated. Marcus, your instinct is to remove me whenever truth gets uncomfortable. That's not what I'm doing. It is, and I'm done pretending it isn't. He exhaled sharply. This is why I hate ultimatums. I almost laughed, because even then, he framed himself as the one under pressure. You don't hate ultimatums, I said. You hate consequences. Silence. That silence told me more than any argument, because if the answer were easy, he would have already done it. Call her, I said. Right now? Yes. Clara, no, don't slow this down. Don't turn it into something we revisit later. Call her. Another pause. Then finally, okay. He called her on speaker while I stayed silent on the other end. Part of me hated that it had reached that point. Another part needed to hear what happened next because some small, exhausted piece of me still wondered if Marcus's fear had been justified all along. His mother answered warmly. Marcus started stumbling through the truth. Mom, there's something I should have been honest about. Pause. No, nothing bad. Longer pause. I was talking to Clara last night. Silence. He swallowed audibly. Then he admitted everything slowly. That we were still together. That he had hidden parts of the relationship. That he had lied because he didn't want conflict. I waited for disaster, for shouting, for rejection, for proof that his fear had been protecting something real. Instead, his mother sounded confused. Why would you lie about that? Not furious, not hateful, just confused. Marcus tried explaining. I didn't want tension. So you created bigger tension by lying? He had no answer. Then she said the sentence that cracked the whole story open. Marcus, if you want to be with Clara, then be with Clara. But don't lie to me like I'm some monster you need to manage. I closed my eyes because in that moment, every excuse Marcus had built around his mother collapsed. The catastrophe never came. The rejection never happened. The real obstacle had never been his mother. It had always been Marcus. After the call ended, Marcus stayed quiet for a long time. You still there? I asked. Yeah. How do you feel? I don't know. But I think he did know. For the first time, Marcus had to face the damage he created while trying to avoid imaginary disasters. Our conversation afterward was too calm, like we were both exhausted from carrying the same wound for too long. I did it, he said eventually. You did. So now what? That question hurt. Because even after everything, a part of me still wanted him to understand why I had needed him to do it. I wanted honesty without having to threaten you into it, I said. Marcus didn't respond, and deep down I knew why, because he understood that too. Later that night, he texted me. For a moment, I thought maybe this would be the shift. Maybe hearing his mother's real reaction would force him to see the pattern clearly. Instead, his message read like someone mourning his own discomfort. He talked about how hard the conversation had been, how uncomfortable he felt, how his mother's trust might be damaged, how heavy everything had become. I kept reading, waiting for one sentence about me. It never came. Not once did he say, I understand why this hurt you. Not once did he say, I made you feel hidden. Everything centered on him, his guilt, his pressure, his discomfort. Then came the final line. If your love for me isn't unconditional, he wrote, then maybe it was never really love. I stared at that message for a long time, because manipulation does not always sound cruel. Sometimes it sounds wounded. Sometimes it sounds philosophical. Sometimes it sounds like someone quietly placing themselves at the center of a wound they caused. And suddenly I understood. Marcus believed love meant endless accommodation. He thought accountability threatened love instead of protecting it. That realization did not explode inside me. It settled. Clean, cold, final. I typed slowly. I never asked for unconditional love. Then I asked for honesty. I stared at the screen before sending one more message. Your mother didn't destroy this. I didn't destroy this. The truth didn't destroy this. The lying did. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then nothing. And somehow that silence told me everything. A few days passed. No dramatic breakup scene. No desperate knocking. No flowers. No final speech. Just silence. And that silence clarified what another argument never could. At first, I still checked my phone, not because I planned to chase him, but because some part of me expected Marcus to finally understand what he was losing. I thought maybe distance would make him clearer, more honest, less defensive, but nothing came. No real apology, no self-awareness, no attempt to repair the damage beyond vague sadness. Eventually, I understood something painful. When someone understands your value, distance creates urgency. When they don't, distance creates quiet. One evening, I sat at my kitchen counter drinking tea when my mother called. "How are you feeling?" she asked. I looked out the window. Tired. "That's normal." "No," I said softly. "I'm tired of explaining why basic honesty matters." She went quiet. Then she asked, "Do you think he loved you?" I swallowed hard. Because the answer was still yes. "I think he did," I said. But he loved comfort more." That sentence hurt because it was true. Marcus loved me when loving me was safe. When there was no tension, no confrontation, no emotional risk. But relationships become real in the uncomfortable moments. Anyone can love you privately. The question is whether they stand beside you when truth costs them something. Marcus never really could. Over the next week, memories replayed differently. Not romantically, accurately. The stepped-out calls, the hidden posts, the vague answers, the hesitation whenever family became involved, the way he treated my pain like intensity instead of information. Once I stopped viewing those moments separately, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Marcus didn't just avoid conflict. He avoided emotional responsibility, and love without responsibility eventually becomes loneliness. A week later, Marcus finally texted me. Just one message. "I hope someday you understand why this was hard for me too." I read it twice, then set my phone down without responding, because even then, he was still standing in the center of a wound he helped create. That was when I stopped waiting for closure from him. Closure does not come from the person who kept misunderstanding the damage. It comes when you stop needing them to agree that it hurt. A few days after that, Olivia called me. At first, I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Hey," she said carefully. "Hey." There was an awkward pause before she sighed. "He told me what happened." I figured. Another pause. Then she said something that stayed with me. "For what it's worth, I don't think Marcus realizes how much of his life is controlled by fear." I closed my eyes. "Yeah," I whispered. "I know." "But Clara," she said, "fear explains behavior. It doesn't excuse it." That sentence hit me harder than she probably intended, because that was the line I had been trying to hold for so long. I understood Marcus. That was never the issue. I understood the anxiety, the family pressure, the habit of choosing peace over truth. But understanding someone does not obligate you to keep accepting behavior that slowly destroys your sense of worth. A month later, my life became quieter. Not magically happy, just quieter. I stopped checking my phone. I stopped rehearsing imaginary conversations. I stopped softening my feelings so someone else could survive hearing them. And slowly, something inside me returned. Not just confidence, visibility. That's the best way I can describe it. Because loving Marcus had taught me how easily a person can disappear while still standing beside someone. You shrink. You excuse. You lower the bar until basic honesty feels like too much to ask. I don't hate him. I don't think Marcus was evil. I think he was afraid in ways he never fully confronted. But fear becomes dangerous when someone keeps choosing it over truth, especially when the person paying the price is the one who loves them. Looking back now, I realize the relationship didn't end the night I gave him the ultimatum. It ended much earlier, probably the first time he removed me from a sentence because telling the truth felt inconvenient. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. Because when you love someone deeply, you become very skilled at calling loneliness patience. But eventually reality catches up, and once it does, you either keep abandoning yourself to preserve the relationship, or you finally choose yourself instead. I chose myself.